National Guard is now better prepared to work with soldiers across branch and country lines. In August, the Michigan National Guard hosted Exercise Northern Strike. It's the largest National Guard Bureau-sponsored training in the nation.
The Michigan National Guard told Tristan Kendrick and I we were the first journalists to be embedded with the soldiers in Camp Grayling at Lower Michigan. The highlight of the trip for me, flying in a Black Hawk helicopter. The adrenaline rush was like no other, and our pilot was a man from Lawrence. Even though our training mission didn't go as planned, he told me there is always something to learn to ensure these soldiers can keep us safe in an emergency.
There's nothing else like flying a Black Hawk.
More than 6,300 soldiers, 37 U.S. states and territories, 5 countries, everyone at Camp Grayling with one goal.
We help the units get ready. If they're going to be deploying somewhere in the Middle East or anywhere else, we try to help get them prepared for the type of enemy forces that they might encounter. While this annual 2-week training was all hands on deck, everyone in the National Guard is also a civilian with normal, everyday jobs. Chief Warrant Officer Kemppanen flies Black Hawk helicopters for the National Guard, but his full-time job is working Border Patrol for the federal government. And he comes home every night to his family here in the UP.
I do have kids. They all live in Painesville right now. They go to Houghton schools. It's beautiful. I've always loved the UP. I've loved the Western UP the most. I mean, I grew up there, grew up in the area, and it's home.
And after 23 years in the Guard, Kemppanen says he's loved every bit of it.
I joined because I always found it interesting to do stuff like that. I knew my cousin joined a couple years prior, and there was obviously college money, and also I just wanted to just experience the life. I heard like a lot about it. A lot of my friends were doing it. Just sounded like a good opportunity.
Kemppanen and the rest of the flight crew were supposed to fly from Camp Grayling to Beaver Island and then to K.I. Sawyer and back. But once we were in the air, wind kept us from completing the mission.
Weather came in up in Marquette area and a little bit south of there, and we couldn't get it. We couldn't fly into that area.
Even when the mission doesn't go as planned, like this one, Chief Warrant Officer Kemppanen says there's something everybody can still learn.
Not only the people that are flying it, but other people. There's all sorts of things that are going on. It's all part of the training for actually going into combat if we had to do this for real life. Since we didn't get to do the whole mission, we still helped us out a lot by getting us in the aircraft, getting up, going that way, getting to know the area, going over water, checking out different landmarks, be able to talk to people. Fine, we flew 4-ship multi-ship, which is 4 aircraft in our ship. And that's always a bonus to do because that's a skill that you have to keep on working on to get better at it.
Kemppanen's family was waiting for him in K.I. Sawyer, and since we didn't make it there, he left a message for his kids.
Maya, Eli, Austin, I love you. Dad loves you and misses you. I'll see you soon.
Chief Warrant Officer Kemppanen was not the only Yooper we met. Later this week, we'll introduce you to a man from Ishpeming who works in the Tilden mine. But tomorrow, TV6's Tristan Kendrick will show you the other side of flying, the refuelers. That'll be on your TV6 News tonight at 7/6 Central.
We continue tonight on our journey through Exercise Northern Strike. Now this time you'll meet the people who make it possible for pilots to fly.
TV6's Tristan Kendrick learned why being a refueler is so important for the mission and what other opportunities it offers soldiers.
Fueling the Black Hawk helicopters is part of the nation's largest National Guard Bureau-sponsored training. While lots of soldiers say it's not the most glamorous job, it's one of the most important tasks of the day. Army Specialist and Fueler Benjamin Perez traveled from East Lansing to take part in this 2-week training at Camp Grayling. He says the choppers can be fueled 2 different ways.
Right now we're doing a hot fuel. We got a FARP set up. Usually we do cold refuel back at Grand Ledge down in East Lansing.
Perez says cold refueling takes longer because everything in the Black Hawk is turned off. He also says hot refueling is the quickest and most efficient way to get gas in the choppers.
We just go out there, pump out about like 200 to 400 gallons depending on how many birds come in. We can only do 2 right now, and usually when it's really hot out, there's a nice cool breeze with the blades.
Perez says his main reason for joining the National Guard is to help pay for his college tuition. He also says the camaraderie and compatibility in his unit is incredible.
I feel like everybody here is my friend, and I would hang out with them outside of here, which isn't really kind of a thing at most units. Sometimes you just go to drill and go to drill, but I feel like I would hang out with these people outside of here. pretty close-knit here.
Samantha Harris of Grand Rapids is also a National Guard Army specialist in the same unit as Perez. She says she's always wanted to be in the military since she was a kid. Harris says she joined the Army while in high school as another way to pay for college.
I joined when I was 17, so I was still in high school. Did a program called Split Ops where I went to basic training after junior year of high school. So I really just wanted something to do in that COVID time as well, but I've also gotten my college fully paid for, so it's been great.
Now, Harris also says the skills that she's learning here can be used with any job that she works in the future because she's learning to work with people of all different cultures.
I've met so many different ethnicities, people that come from different places and different life experiences, so I've learned to really learn from everybody and work with everybody, and so I think that's been very valuable moving forward in the future.
Harris, like Perez, says one of her favorite parts about the training has been finding a new family. She also says this training has taught her many skills such as planning and arriving early to everything. Harris says the Northern Strike training teaches all soldiers a ton of information in a short amount of time.
We really have to lock in and assemble it quickly, make sure it's all put together, and then push fuel because we only do it once a year, so this is really our time to practice what we learn and really fuel birds hot.
Both Harris and Perez say they are proud to serve their country and keep citizens like you and your family safe. Tristan Kendrick, TV6 News.
Thank you, Tristan. Coming up tomorrow on your TV6 News Tonight, you'll meet a man from Ishpeming whose job is to put out fires at Camp Grayling. He shares how being a part of the National Guard has taken him across Michigan and what roles he's played at making state parks more accessible for us. That's tomorrow at 7 Eastern. The National Guard is filled with everyday people with everyday jobs, but when they enlist, most people have a completely different job. As part of our week-long coverage of Exercise Northern Strike, we're taking you to Camp Grayling's fire department and introducing you to a Youper who's had many different jobs within the National Guard. He shares how that's led him to be a part of several projects here in the UP, some that your family can enjoy in the outdoors. Where there's fire, the fire department isn't far behind. And it's no different in the National Guard.
This October, I'll be at the 28-year mark, and I've done a variety of engineering facets in the Army, and firefighting is just a newly acquired one for me.
Michael Anderson is an Ishpeming native and a fire officer for the Camp Grayling Army Fire Department.
My favorite part is watching the Army soldiers because they dig into it. They really enjoy what they're doing. They want to protect people, and they want to protect equipment and property. And just watching that passion that they have to do the job safely and to help in general, I think brings a great sense of patriotism.
But the National Guard is a part-time job for most people. So when Anderson is not training and fighting fires for Michigan's National Guard, he works for Cliffs Natural Resources and the Tilden Mine.
The Guard has long roots in the state of Michigan, and your everyday soldier could work in any industry imaginable, and you may not know it, but those contributions are going on daily.
The National Guard trains 1 weekend a month and has another 2-week training once a year. But the work soldiers do is year-round. Anderson has worked on projects at state parks across Michigan and ones you might have visited here in the UP.
I was part of the 107th Engineer Battalion, and we had joint projects with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, Parks and Recreation Division. And in that, we operated at Porcupine Mountain Wilderness State Park, Craig Lake State Park, Baraga State Park, Van Riper State Park, Otsego and Young Lake State Parks, plus Wilderness State Park. And in all those, we did a plethora of projects from roofing, plumbing, electrical, road work, culverts, lakeside armoring of Lake Superior with other agencies also involved.
For Anderson, being able to help his own community is what makes the sacrifice all worth it.
And to me, that is the greatest contribution that I have personally contributed to in my almost 28-year military career, is that those projects, those engineer projects that we did, directly contributed to Michiganders' enjoyment of Michigan's natural resources. And to me, that is just a keystone of my military career, the capstone, that I look back with great pride.
Anderson says he's lived around the world, but the UP resonates most with him, and he's thankful for being able to play a part in making it more accessible for Michiganders. Tomorrow, Tristan Kendrick takes us to the gas chambers on base, where soldiers learn to trust the gear they're wearing. That's on your TV6 News Tonight at 7/6 Central. Exercise Northern Strike is all about preparing for the future. We continue our week-long coverage tonight, showing you how Marines test their gas equipment. TV6's Tristan Kendrick shares what these Marines learned from this training and why they believe more people should serve our country.
Scenarios like this are the reason the U.S. Marines recruiting slogan has always been, the few, the proud. Marines say their branch is not for the weak. This Northern Strike training is a simulated tear gas scenario. During this exercise, Marines got in groups of 11 and went into a tear gas chamber for several minutes. Sergeant Jake Brown of Virginia says this training is his least favorite activity. However, it's necessary.
The purpose of this is to instill confidence in our gear and let these Marines know that they can trust their gas mask when we need it. We were kind of just waving our arms to get some motion in the air and blow that gas around so it's evenly distributed.
Staff Sergeant Andrew Cruz of Georgia says his Marines are wearing what's called mission-oriented protective posture gear.
And that will protect them from chemical, radiological, biological, and nuclear attacks. Obviously, there is a time frame in which they can get it on in that safety window. So it's good that the Marines are getting these reps today and good practical application training.
Cruz also says Northern Strike is teaching him and other Marines how to work with other military branches.
Making sure that all of our jargon is the same, which it usually isn't. Making sure our paperwork is the same, which it usually isn't. So it's good to get out here for our leaders to get the reps on how to coordinate and how to mesh well together.
Another Marine says if you're looking for a reason to join the military, two things it comes with are friends and what they call newfound family.
You can trust your gear, but it's also trusting the man to your left and your right. So you're in a situation, you can trust the guy to your left or your right to get in there and help you get through it.
Sergeant Brown agrees with Paredes. He says the bonds you will make with members of any branch will be life-changing.
My best friends are the guys that serve to my left and right. And I know that they'd take a bullet for me just as I'd take a bullet for them, and then also for the love of the nation. Someone's got to do the job, why not you?
Some Marines expressed off camera how at first they were nervous about joining the military. Those same Marines say now it was one of the best decisions they could have ever made. Tristan Kendrick, TV6 News.
Wrapping up our coverage on Exercise Northern Strike, we've taken you across Camp Grayling, introduced you to the everyday people who make up the National Guard and how these soldiers train so they can protect us. And tonight, you'll meet the people who care for the soldiers. Tristan, Grace?
Cody, Grace and I toured the medical tents and learned how the National Guard transports and treats injured soldiers. During Northern Strike, they're training for real-world situations, and it was no different in the medical tent.
We watched as medics from across the world work together to assess, treat, and triage patients, and learned why overcoming potential language and cultural barriers is vital to the work they do.
A common rescue mission begins with a team of military medics escorting a wounded soldier back to base. Soldiers told Grace and me this Northern Strike training is fast-paced, and things are always changing. I got to speak with a Michigan Army National Guard commander. Michael Barup is stationed with the 1171st Medical Company in Ypsilanti and in charge of this unit. He says this medical training has a lot of moving parts.
We provide R2, C2 medical support for a brigade level area. We have anywhere from our basic medics up to our field surgeons. So we support any maneuver elements within the area to provide basic life support all the way to trauma, triage, and assessment, and evacuation of those patients to higher echelons of care.
Barup says his crew is also learning to utilize what's called a field litter ambulance. He says his units use it to transfer wounded soldiers or patients.
Whether it be the battalion aid station to a Role 1, a Role 2 like we have here today, or Role 3, which is our higher echelon of care, they can fit 1 to 4 patients depending on the severity that we have. And then the medic will sit in the back with 2 drivers in the front to transport those patients.
I spoke with a medic whose job is to lead her team through the patient's care.
I'm assessing the patient and then directing my junior medics on their roles in the assessment, and then doing some interventions and also directing other medics to do them.
Rachel McKiernan of Richmond, Michigan joined the Army National Guard in 2017. She says her experiences as a woman have been positive.
Women are typically seen as caretakers, so I would say as a medic, it's one unique place in the Army where I would say we're treated pretty equally with open arms. different in other areas, sure. They don't view you as tough, physically strong or capable at times, but I would say as a medic in the Army, for the most part, I've always been respected and welcomed.
As medics, it's their job to care for injured soldiers and do their best to get them home, which makes training like Exercise Northern Strike so important, not just to keep us safe,
3, 2, 1, go.
but to keep each other safe.
There's for sure a lot of unrest going on in the world right now. It can be pretty scary, but we're here preparing for our mobilization so that our medics are prepared and they can take care of your own when they're doing their job.
In talking with all the soldiers, we learned everyone has joined for their own reasons. But once you do, you become a part of something bigger than yourself. They come together not just to train, but to invest in each other, build each other up, and ultimately work to keep each other and us safe.
And that's what Exercise Northern Strike is all about. Training in a controlled environment, not just with their own units, but with soldiers from across the nation, so they can be better prepared to protect our freedoms.